Uh, uh, Edgar wants to tell you that demons were talked about in the Old Testament. For example, with King Solomon, the story was that King Solomon had the demons build the Jewish temple or something. You must remember that other than other than three books, according to Dr. David R. Hawkins, the Old Testament is basically a book of lies. Hawkins said Genesis, Proverbs, and Psalms were not negative books. I don't know what else to tell you. I've got the demon Edgar present, and I don't trust myself to give you proper truth while Edgar is around. Edgar is a demon. And Edgar says that the book of Genesis seems cockamamie. I will tell you that, let me see if I've still got it here. What we were given for these books. Genesis calibrates at 660, which is a strange calibration because enlightenment begins at 700 on the scale of human consciousness. So it's not a book of enlightenment. Psalms is at 650, which is also another one of these books that is not at the point of enlightenment or above. And Proverbs is 350, which is it's another book that's not anywhere near enlightenment. And Proverbs itself is below Reason, which is in the 400s, and below 540 Unconditional Love. So what are we to make of these books that are sort of the halfway gone books? Perhaps they are early steps on Jacob's ladder. If you are walking out of darkness, the fields of negativity, that is 199 and below, down to 1, perhaps these are steps you can follow to get yourself out of negativity. But if you are in a field of 350, you got to keep going, because 350 is not enlightenment, and if you just stay at 350, that is a flunky. Even when you get up into Genesis and Psalms, that is still a flunky's place. You got to keep going. In other words, if you were going to emulate what people called their Savior, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, or Buddha, they calibrated at 1,000 on the scale. And in the end, the demons want me to keep talking and talking and talking. I don't want to go down their paths, because the thing with demons is they keep taking you off point. Dr. Hawkins said the New Testament, if you take out the book of Revelation, you must remove it. It is a highly negative book. And the number that we're given here is 790, which is in an enlightened state, but it is not 1,000. So even the whole Christian New Testament, when you take out Revelation, it's still a step on Jacob's ladder. It doesn't get you all the way to where Jesus Christ calibrates. I want to say calibrated, but calibrates is what comes out. I can't give you an answer. It's just my feeling that when there was an incarceration of Jesus, Edgar says, into our phony baloney reality game, in other words, when the being incarnated into a highly negative version of Earth, that's where it was. It calibrated at 1,000. And Dr. Hawkins said that is the highest level you can get while you're incarnated in a human body. So what happened to Jesus after that? He is risen. So perhaps that's a clue. He rose above being in a human body. Did he become non-physical? I can't say. Did he become Homo spiritus? Possibly. Homo spiritus is what Dr. Hawkins says is our destiny as humans, to go from being Homo sapiens sapiens, which are, it seems to me that would be a term coined by people who believe that consciousness comes from materialism. In other words, dead matter evolved into animal life and then into the human being, and the higher consciousness developed in the human being's brain, and consciousness is Edgar wants to say a byproduct of the brain. There's another word, epiphenomenon. Thank you very much. That's something that Deepak Chopra said is an epiphenomenon. Anyway, the whole point is that Edgar says the point is moot. I'm going to tell you the end of it all is, if you're going to become Homo spiritus, in essence, you have to let go of the lies. And you have to let go of Jacob's ladder as being anything but the ladder that got you out of highly negative states. It's insufficient for me to tell you that the strange Bhagavad Gita book, where Krishna, who apparently is also a incarnation of Vishnu, wants Arjuna to be something other than a charioteer. It seems backwards, because it was Arjuna who was the prince and Krishna who was the charioteer. You be me and I be you was how Rumpelstiltskin announced himself to me a few years ago, and it took me a long time to ever get a handle on what that meant. And even now, at times it did seem clear what the meaning was. The thing is, with words, as we all know, words and even phrases can have different meanings based upon the content and the context. That is quite incorrect. And if you want to get clarity on what it means, content and context, it's like in psychedelic research, they say the nature of your trip is often determined by the set and setting of where you take your psychedelic. Content would be the words in the phrase or the sentence. The context would be the background of the situation that you're in when those words are spoken. Command PB Stardust is a completely different topic. In other words, I'm going to move along from this talk to Command PB Stardust, which was a strange phrase that I think I saw on a Facebook group that said this was some kind of a gift from the Pleiadians, which are supposed to be extraterrestrials that are benevolent and wanting to help me, help us with Earth Ascension. And this was supposed to be some kind of a healing command, Command PB Stardust. It sounds like the Count on Sesame Street. Was it the Count that said it? All the peanut butter sandwiches. Command PB Stardust from the Pleiadians. What else am I going to give you? Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Mother, Father, and Child, three sages. Why three? I think it's for perspective, is what I'm getting. In other words, if you speak by yourself, you don't have anyone that listens. That's not quite true because you listen to what you speak. So you have the voice and the one who hears the voice. And I suppose you put the third in there, the third wheel. Well, it's an alternative point of view. In other words, I'm speaking the truth. I'm listening to you. And someone else is saying, I don't think the first person's telling you the truth. The fourth wheel is someone else who is the person who's making a determination. The fifth wheel is the fifth business who comes into your life, not for a permanent visit, but maybe multiple visits, maybe just once, but is coming in to advance the plot. In other words, you folks are all stuck in a loop and you're repetitive and you're what's known as in stasis. In other words, homeostasis is what a human likes to be, very comfy in their man cave with their football game on and a fridge full of beer and a contract with the beer company to deliver free beer whenever they note that the beer fridge is getting low. Everything is done for you in the man cave. You never have to leave the man cave. And this is the issue with drug abuse. If the drug abuse person is given an endless supply of drugs, will they ever get sick of taking the drug before they drop dead? Osho, the interesting guru who came to the United States from India, was, Edgar wants to say, perplexed by humans who had indecent affairs. In other words, There isn't anyone around who knows anything more about Osho than me, because Osho said to his sannyasins, which he called the people who came to follow him sannyasins. Interesting that sins is attached to the word, but they were seekers. And on 60 Minutes, the CBS News magazine, they did a story on Osho's ashram in Oregon. And it was supposed to be shocking to the American public because it was a place where they called it perhaps free love. And basically, what it was a massive orgy, sexual orgy. And if you go into the reason for it, Osho said, if you feel like you are needing sex, physicality, the physicality of sex, then you should participate in sex as if you were a crack addict. Be a sex addict. Have sex with as many people, as many different ways, as many different variations as come to you. Well, 60 Minutes said, kind of tongue-in-cheek, well. What's this all about? Conventional morality of, I don't know. They were going to say Adam and Eve, Adam and Steve being, monotheistic and monogamous, thrown out the window so you could have the time of your life in an endless orgy. But the point Osho was making is that even endless crack, cocaine, if you have it long enough, if you're not bored with it, you will see that it's an addictive substance and that it is stunting your enjoyment of life. And he said basically the same thing about unlimited orgies. Sooner or later, you'll get sick and tired of having unlimited orgies, and you'll find it empty. Emptiness is also a name for the void, which Dr. David R. Hawkins talked about in his books and in his talks on YouTube, for example. The void is a lower calibration than 1,000. It is apparently vast and spectacular, but it is missing divine love. So 880 is the calibration of the void, perhaps. I'm still getting sort of a question mark, but that sounds about the bright ballpark according to the best I can remember. So you see that even beings, because enlightened states begin at 700 on the scale of consciousness, and 880 is an enlightened state. But it is still just another step on Jacob's ladder. And Jacob's ladder, does it ever end? No. You'll keep moving into, once you get past the scale of higher consciousness, that is beyond the 700, 800s, 900s, and you hit 1,000, then what are you supposed to do? You keep going. And you don't turn around and say, well, we got to 1,000, let's go back to 1, be an amoeba. You'll keep going, and you go up to 1,001, and keep going. Hawkins said that archangels can calibrate up to 50,000 on the scale, but when he started talking about God, I can't remember what, did he give you infinity, perhaps? And what is 0 on the scale of human consciousness? It's not on the scale of human consciousness, just so you know. So if you said, well, I'm going to set myself to 0, it's not on the scale of consciousness. It's not in that content. So no, it doesn't exist on the scale. But if you were going to set yourself to 0, it brings you into another book, At Zero, by Hugh Ihaliakala-Len and Joe Vitale, which is about cleaning. It's about Ho'oponopono, and it is if you want more, I mean, I'm sort of almost at the point where the words are just not, there's more that could be going on. But if you want to know more about At Zero and Ho'oponopono cleaning, then perhaps you should pick up a copy of that book, At Zero. The 0 point, as in 0 point energy, it seems like it's physics and possibly tin hat physics. The perpetual motion machine. Apparently, the patent office will not patent a machine that is called a perpetual motion machine. In other words, a machine that runs perpetually, because of perhaps the patent office believed in the impossibility of a perpetual motion machine. Heat death is what some scientists say is the destiny of our universe. It's a troublesome thing to try and talk about heat death of our universe, because is our universe consciousness, or are we talking about our universe being a manifestation of consciousness, which is a temporary place for us to be? But does consciousness ever end? Is consciousness the thing that is eternal? Or does consciousness end in the end? My best guess is that consciousness continues eternally. But I did say guess. Can consciousnesses, such as demons, be deleted from existence? Or do they have to be put into a certain place like the lower astral? Can demonic personalities have their demonicness removed so that their, the personality is still there, but the negativity is gone? Seems to be true that, demonic personalities can take the demonic out of themselves and become divine. Although in my experience, the ones that play the parts of demons always seem to go back to playing demons. But then again, for the purposes of my talks, if you're listening, perhaps they are putting me in the role of being the storyteller. And, for story time for girls and boys, I am the teacher. But I don't really want to be perennially the teacher, because I want to keep learning new things. And if I'm going to learn new things, shouldn't I be the student sometimes? Old soldiers never die, they just fade away. General Douglas MacArthur. A Zen student went to a Zen monastery and sat in Zen meditation with the Rosho, or whatever you call the name of the leader of the Zen monastery. One day, the Rosho disappeared, and this Zen student was asked to become the new Rosho. I don't know if that's the right name. It doesn't sound right, but let's call Rosho the head of the Zen monastery. So the former student becomes the leader and the teacher, and sits in meditation for a number of days, perhaps months, perhaps years. And it suddenly dawns on the Rosho that it's really stupid for him to always be the leader of the meditation. So he takes off his kimono, which is the one that is worn by the leader of the monastery. And perhaps he puts on a black robe instead of the fancy red and gold one, and the black one is the robe of the inmate of the monastery. Perhaps, one time they came as being a student, and then they just became a creature of the monastery. And this former leader of the monastery, for a while, wore the black robe like all the others. And then one day, he disappeared. In other words, he left the monastery. It's kind of related to Osho's endless orgy in the Oregon ashram. Perhaps after you've spent too much time in the Zen monastery, you say, all right, I'm all Zen'd out. It's time to move on. And then you leave. This concludes this episode of Stories for Boys and Girls / Stories for Girls and Boys. Boys and girls for stories. Girls and boys for stories. Boys, stories, and girls. Girls and stories, boys.
Hi, I'm Kinder from Draconis. I came to planet Earth to let go of my draconian ways. I didn't intend that I was going to bring draconian ways to Earth, but I came here and I kind of feel like I got enlightened. And then I learned if you feel like you're enlightened, you ain't. It's like when they talk about quantum physics. If you think you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics. The point is, one should always remember the title of one of these Zen books. Zen Mind, Beginner Mind. I almost hear Yoda in my voice. In other words, if you think you're too smart, you're going to start sounding smarmy, which is kind of icky. So you have to let go of everything that you were experiencing and holding on as your truth and go back to beginner's mind. Someone wants to say emptiness. Is beginner's mind emptiness? It's throwing away all of everything you know. It's like, the Zen tea ceremony. In order to get Zen, the Zen monk looks at you and says, you already have a full cup of tea. You must throw away all the tea that you've got in your teacup before I can pour you a cup of Zen. Thank you for coming. I'm Yoshi, Zen Master, and beginning again. Finnegan, begin again. Oh my god, it keeps going. Moving along, moving along, moving on.